Okay, so I'm recording it. The first thing you should know is that the project creation tool is not tied to a specific course.
Mm-hmm.
It's tied to a specific account.
Oh.
So it doesn't matter what course I go into here. I have a lot of stuff in my demo courses here. It'll always, the project creation tool will, be the same. Whatever I have in there won't matter. Let me ask you, in terms of the book series that you all use, is it Go? Is it Exploring?
It's Exploring.
Exploring, okay. So don't worry that this says Go.
I understand.
What I want to show you is just the way to access the project creation tool. And the way I do that is you can go to any instructor menu item. I usually use Add from a library.
Mm-hmm.
And then right here where it says Tools,
okay.
I click that and Project Creation Tool. And again, this is authenticated based off of your account and not the course.
Okay.
So when you come into the Project Creation Tool, this first tab, which is My Projects, will be blank. Again, obviously, I do a lot of training on this, and I haven't cleaned this up in a while.
Whole lot of it.
The second tab is the Project Pearson Library. So, and again, keep in mind, this is for our 2016 courses, and again, our 2019 courses will have all of the projects. So this shows you 1,116 projects across all of our book series.
Okay.
That you have access to, that you can then clone and do with it as you please. And that's the key here. That's the kind of the power that we provide here.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking to modify a specific grader project, I would come into the Pearson Project Library, and under this search, I would never type in a name to search. The best way to search is to use the little drop down and use the metadata. So in this case, the application, are you doing just Excel or is this Word?
It's Excel, yeah.
Okay, so I choose Excel. I'm going to choose a series. You're using Exploring.
Yeah.
And let's just do...
Oh, that's good.
Right, so this will filter specifically on the chapter. I think chapter 2 is charts. Let's just do chapter 1.
So sorry, I'm interrupting you. When you say Exploring, so this is the one which is by Marianne Potts, or it can be anything else?
Yeah, no, it can be anything.
Oh, Exploring is your series, and it doesn't mean one book. It can be any book.
Right. The Exploring here, is that what you're asking? Because this is Go and Skills for Success, your Office, all in one. So you can find projects from any one of those. I just assume since you're using the Exploring series, the only issue and concern of picking a grader project from another book series is that the students won't have, the textbook that they have is very specific for what's done in Exploring. Not that they couldn't do it, but they may get confused.
Yeah, that's true.
Is that what but this has, all of the chapters, including the capstone projects. So I'm going to go ahead and click on search. And for some reason, this is really acting very weird lately. It is. And I don't know if it's because they're concentrating on 20, because it should only show 4 courses, 4 projects. And the naming is a little bit weird when it comes to 2016. So this is Exploring 16. This is Excel. Chapter 1 grader. This is mid-level 1 homework. This is Exploring introductory capstone. I don't know what that is. Demo. This is new, and I have to believe this has something to do with our 2019 content.
Maybe.
So, yeah, these demo placeholders, I have no idea where they've come from. So here is, it's just interesting. So here's, the capstone project, the homework, and the capstone assessment, and the mid-level 2. Do you understand the difference between assessments and homeworks, grader projects?
Not really.
Okay, so the homework grader projects mean that the instructions are not only in the downloaded materials, but also in the back of the book.
Okay.
So that if the student were to use the book for their instructions, we would give them more prompts. The other thing to understand is that the capstone here of the homework, and so an assessment, I'm sorry. So the assessment is one in which the instructions are only in the downloaded files. So this assessment is kind of a variant of this one. And these two cover all of the objectives of the chapter, whereas the mid-level 1 will cover the first half of the objective of the chapter, and mid-level 2 will cover the second half.
So mid-level 1 and 2, they have instructions only in the downloaded files or in the book also?
They're in the book also because they're a homework.
Mid-level 1, oh.
Yeah, and I know that the names of them that are in My Lab IT are a little different than what you see here. and that's where I just want to make sure you understand the confusion. And the way we name them in My Lab IT is really confusing.
Yeah, actually, I didn't see those two in my IT lab.
So let me show you.
Mid-level 1 and mid-level 2.
Yeah.
I think I didn't see it. Oh, you're adding from library. Sorry, I was doing it from managed course materials.
Yeah, you have to go to add from a library. And I'm just doing the share because this isn't exploring. But once you go into the exploring, and it's on the course materials library. So if I go into chapter 1, into activities, and into grader activities, this is what we name them. This is homework 1, chapter capstone. This is the mid-level 1 exercise, homework 2, which is a ridiculous name. Mid-level 2, homework 3. And then we have one that's called just an assessment. But this assessment is really a capstone project too for that chapter.
Which we can use in an exam thing, right?
Yeah, so you could switch out between these two. But again, if you want to make some changes, here's how it works. Let's just use the assessment one here. I'm going to mouse over this, and then on the third icon is clone. So when I click on clone, I can now, once I clone it, it's mine. I can change the name. I can do whatever I want with it. Here's the little, my little caveat. Once you clone this and you make it your own project, number one, it's unlinked from any updates that will happen on the Pearson side.
Okay.
And it becomes your own. And in that particular case, the project creation tool is a self-service tool. Now, because you're using one of our existing projects, and you're just going to make a few modifications, you should be pretty comfortable with the quality of the product of it. But if we were to update, if there were being any more updates on our end for this particular project, you notice it's set for 1.6. And again, right now we're working on all our 2019 content. But if this were to go to 1.7, that would not happen on your end.
I get that.
So that's just one of the things to understand. When you clone this, again, it becomes your own. So when I clone it, it comes into the project creation tool area in an edit mode. So let me just explain kind of how the project creation tool works. So you have a final document, the solution file, and you have a starting document. What happens behind the scenes is that the final document is mapped to the starting document. And that's how the grading engine knows, oh, okay, in cell A3, I'm supposed to have 13. Well, in cell A3 on the starting document, 13 is not there. It is in the solution file, and I can go ahead and validate that. So that's how that kind of works. You'll also have the instructions, which is auto-generated, which means that if I were to mess around with any instructions in here, it would automatically change in the downloaded file. And then finally, there's some assets. So most Excel projects don't usually have assets, but some of the later ones where you're asked to import some data could have a CSV file, could have an access file, there could be an image file. Those are the assets. So again, when it comes to, let me go back here. oops, back here. So when it comes to this, you know, when I click and look at a grader project and I go to download materials, that's what the assets would be listed down here too.
Okay.
Okay. So now this, go ahead, please ask.
What did you say about the solution? So if I make some changes in the instructions, so if I make some changes in the start document, say, okay, instructions are going to be updated automatically, and I need to validate the solution, right?
So the instructions won't be updated automatically, only when you make changes in the instructions.
In the instructions, not in the starting document.
Well, if you make changes in the starting document, no. Again, those changes won't be reflected in here. So you're gonna. What I was saying is that mostly what you may have to make some changes in the final document. It's like what you want to do is change some values, right? So that you want to keep pretty much the same instructions, but the values are different. Is that kind of what you're looking at to do?
Yeah, or I can add my own instruction or something like that. Like instead of saying like, I want to add an instruction which says apply special formatting to this cell. So
yeah, and if you do that, you will have to make the change in the solution file.
Okay, and in the start document as well.
The start document you shouldn't have to touch.
No?
Not unless you're going to be really modifying things. You know, so if I take this particular start document, not sure what's in here.
Okay.
So what would you want to be changing in the start document that?
Let's say I add an additional column and I add something else. I add one more row or.
Okay. Well, that can be stuff that you can ask the student to do.
Okay.
And then you can validate that they did that.
Okay.
But
so I should ideally I should not be making changes to the starting document.
No, you have absolute power to do what you want. The point is that if you're adding another row here, you can do that. You just don't say it, you don't validate, you know, you don't, if you're adding a row in the start document and then you're asking the students, did you add that row? It's already added and it will give them automatic points, whether they do it or they don't. So what is your reasoning for wanting to change the starting document?
I just wanted to make it look different. I mean, say instead of workshop, I add something like practicum or something else. I just change the text. So
you can do that.
So solution is synchronized with it. It will be changed automatically.
No, no, you're right. This is the point. You would then have to make the same changes. You would download the solution file here.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and then open up the solution file and make the changes
here also.
Here. Now, keep in mind again, you know, what the students are being asked to do in this is to obviously, you know, put in percentages here. You know, so whatever they're asked to do, I'm not exactly sure. Here, they're asked to use, you know, some formulas that they're being asked to do, and I assume you would want to do that. I mean, if you wanted to change these numbers, go for it. You know, you want to change this, you know what, you wouldn't have to make the change in the solution file, but then it would look really confusing for, you know, for students if you changed, you know, workshop to, I don't know, topic, for example. You know, because you're not validating that part of it, doesn't matter if it's in the solution document or not, but it would be confusing for you, right?
Oh, what do you mean by validating in this context? I mean, where do I have to?
Right. So let me, yeah, we may be getting ahead of ourselves. So again, that the way that let me take this out here. The way that what happens is that you have this instruction here. Copy the range A5 and paste the data below the big data analytics row. For the pasted data, change the start date. So we're asking the student to change the date from 6/25 to 6/29 for this range. So you'll notice where it says drop PCT features. So here's all the features, and there are many of them. I mean, there's, and in every single one of them, they have a little I next to them. And the little I gives you a little context of what this does. So this skill is the cell alignment imitation. We'll check alignments, and it says these are the typical instructions. And then this is what you would see. When you add it, you look, this is what I would do, and I would check box the things that get validated. In other words, that are going to give the students points or partial points. So it's one of those things of understanding what each of these are. So for this particular one, it's a modify cell contents. And I just know that because, again, I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
But modify cell contents, what this particular feature does is it looks to check for any text that was entered or modified. Okay? So I take this and I would drag this over, and then it's going to tell me, okay, what worksheet is this on? What's the cell range? A5 to G5 in this case. And then if I need to do non-adjacent ranges, which it can, you just put a parenthesis, a comma. And what you'll notice here is under content and content location, notice what happened here. So copy the range A5 and paste the data into the big analytics row for the pasted content change. See, this is where I probably shouldn't have gotten rid of that instruction. Okay, so they're actually looking in, I'm sorry, in B8.
Yeah.
So we're looking, I'm sorry, it's actually, let's see, that's the same. So here's my point to you, right? So this 6.4 is the same as this 6.4, right? So if I were to place in here, let me put in here B5. That's saying that if I were to checkbox this content and location, that would mean that from the starting document should not have 6.4 and the ending document does. But because it does, if the student never puts that in or leaves it alone, they're going to get free points. So my point to you is that when we look at this, if you were to change this A4 from topic to workshop, but I leave workshop in the final document, as long as I don't validate that, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But again, from your perspective, you'll want to make this look the same because you're going to want to know what students are doing. So again, in this case, I'm looking at, so I don't want that, so it's going to be B6 to C8. So B to C8. These are the items that got changed. So now what I would do is say content and location, and I give it a certain number of points. This has, let's say 7 points here. And because I want up to 100, and you can change the points whatever you want. The way that this grades now is that it looks at each of those individual cells. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Let me make this simpler. 6. So if the student got B6 right, but got B7 through C8 wrong, they'll get 1 point out of that 6.
Yeah.
And this is how our grading engine validates what's going on behind the scenes. But there are many, many different kinds of features in here. So my point to you is that if you were to say, let me change this from 6.25 to 6.26 and make an end date of 6:30, right? So I'm making changes to the instructions, right? Unless I change that final document, this is not going to grade correctly.
Oh.
Because the student's going to put in there 626, and if
Mm-hmm.
I don't, but the final document is looking at 625 on B8 right there, and 629.
Mm-hmm.
So it will mark it wrong. So what I would have to do in this case is go to my solution file,
Mm-hmm.
change the date here,
Mm-hmm. And here, yeah.
change the date here. Go ahead and save this. Now this is a nice feature of the project creation tool. I can upload as many variations or many, of that. So I go ahead and upload that final that solution file again.
Mm-hmm.
And what it will do is it's going to remap.
Mm-hmm.
And when I remap this, you'll notice it says any features in edit mode will lose their modifications. In other words, it's going to go look through the document and say, I think there's some changes here.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, yeah, I changed it from 626, so now it will grade correctly.
Mm-hmm.
That's my point to you in when you modify a grader project. If you want to add instructions, you can definitely do that. But again, you'll have to make sure, or add your own instructions. You'll have to make sure that
Everything matches correctly, right?
Everything matches correctly, right?
Mm.
One of the things I wanted to make sure that you understand, especially with Excel, is the formulas and functions feature.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, in cell D5, enter a formula that calculates the number of days for the first workshop. Add a 1 to the results to include the total number of days, including the start and end dates, and then copy the formula. So you notice you can add multiple features onto one thing here. But let me go into the formula and function feature because this is really important.
Mm-hmm.
So what this is doing is looking at cell D5 and D8 only.
Mm-hmm.
And when I mouse over, that's the formula that's in there. The question becomes, what if the student did 1 plus, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, is that efficient? Is that effective? Probably not. But students do weirdo, strange things. And do you want to get a ton of emails from students? So the question is how do you deal with some of the tolerance on the formulas? So with this, I'm going to click the F of X. And this particular, they added specific permutations. Now, this was done probably before our automatic permutations was available. But what you'll notice on this automatic permutations is that it's a formula with simple arithmetic operators or the sum function. So in other words, like with the student,
I know, yeah.
They would do, if they did A2 plus A3, instead of using the sum function, and this is checked, it would grade it correctly. And this, this really just needs to be clicked right here, because it will take up all of those things. You'll see also on a lot of other functions it'll work. Now on the functions that automatic permutations won't work, this will be grayed out. And then you can see you can add any permutations you want. Now, when you do add automatic permutations, and also by default, ignore case is checked, which will mean that it will ignore if the student used lowercase b, it'll ignore that. The other thing that it will ignore is absolute and relative cell reference. So, but if there's a formula that you want to make sure the student uses absolute and or mixed referencing, you want to go in and uncheck this.
Uncheck it, yeah.
Because what this will do, and again, why students would do this, I have no idea. But students are students, right? And they could. Well, in this case, they shouldn't do it because if they put absolute reference or mixed referencing when they copy down, it's going to be wrong. But that's another whole story, right? And then there's this other thing in this permutation called add alternate formula. And I honestly didn't think of a use case for this until I was working with an instructor from the University of Louisville, and he was doing some simple date subtraction. And he was just doing one cell minus the other one. He hadn't taught any of the date functions to his students yet. However, one of his students knew the date functions and put it in there, and it was marked wrong. And I went, that's a reason for an alternate formula. So in that particular case, that alternate formula is not a permutation of the one that's existing in that particular cell, but it's something that I will accept. Again, I can't think of a lot of other use cases for this. I mean, the only other thing I could think of was like the VLOOKUP. Maybe you will accept index and match. Should a student smart enough to use those two? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
But the bottom line is that when this project becomes your own, you get to choose whether you're going to accept this or not. And that's important. But it's important to understand what's behind the scenes here. And also, you should know, once you really start playing around in here, this becomes what I call deep troubleshooting too, because you'll be able to clone projects and be able to see how things are actually being graded. So the next, so you'll notice this one is the one that's validated. It's checked. If I were to check these again, then it's all going to be based on how many cells I'm looking at and how many things I'm grading. It'll be multiple of that for. So what's a formula function name? This one doesn't make sense for this particular, what the students are doing. But again, let's take the sum function, for example. And you allow automatic permutations. And so the student put in A2 plus A3, which is really stupid. But I'll go ahead and I'll accept that with the automatic permutations. But I do want to take some points off because they're not using the sum function. And that's what this is. So when I click on that and I open this up, I can say sum. So in other words, in this particular case, I will get 2 points for doing this, and I'll lose 2 points because I don't have the sum function in there. So I did A2 plus A3, but that's just really bad. Now you could also, if you wanted to take more points off instead of partial grade off, you can add another formula and function and do these all separately.
Get that.
The last one is the formula result, which I don't use very, very rarely. So the thing you would think is that because this is in the formula and function feature, that the result of this is based on the formula. It's not. So if the student physically typed in 3 and physically put in 5, and I had this checked, they will get the credit. Now, what you're going to find interesting in a lot of our grader projects is that our authors actually do that. They give the student 1 point for this. Now, again, you'd hope that the student isn't going to sit there and physically type this in. But if they did, if they took out their calculator and did it, they would get 1 point.
1 point, yeah.
So once again, because you have control of it, if you don't like that, you can go ahead and delete that and mess around with the points. I mean, the project creation tool can be a little overwhelming.
It is.
Because one of the other things you have to consider is, there's some of the instructions, based on our projects could be cascading. In other words, something that they do in number 8, if you were to modify that, could affect something that's in number 10. So you got to be, Excel is not as bad as, let's say, Word, but you got to be you just have to be conscious of that.
Oh, I know. So here you randomly chose cell D5 and D9, right? So we could validate things on any number of cells.
Yep.
See, it was just randomly chosen D5 and D8. In instruction number 7, you just check on D5, D7.
Yep.
It could be checked on all of them, right?
Correct. Yep, it could be. So, well, let me give you another limitation, though. So.
I know it is a whole lot of work. It's not that easy.
I'll put it this way. Right. It's not easy at first, but then once you have an understanding, that's why I was asking, how much do you really want to change? I mean, if it's really just changing some of the values, like we did in number 2 here, then it's not so bad, right? You know, and I'm not even getting into the publishing part of it. You know, but that's just creating a variant of, you know, just because of a student, you know, oh, I'm going to use my friends from last semester, and he just plops all the numbers in and does it and gets it all wrong because you've changed those values.
Yeah, just making some cosmetic changes will do, I think.
Yeah. I mean, yes, you can get pretty deep into this. You know,
don't have to. Yeah.
What's that?
I think we don't have to go that deep into it to make all those changes. Even my objective is just to make it look different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, like if it's, you know, here's you know, apply bold and green.
Yeah.
Change. Maybe don't apply the bold and change it to a blue font, you know, or whatever. Yeah. Those kinds of things. Again, you just have to make those updates on those particular cells in the final document. That's why I'm saying if you don't mess around with the starting document, that can save you a little bit. But again, you can. I mean, there's nothing wrong with messing around with the starting document and adding some of your own stuff to it, or even taking out some you know, some things. It's just, you know, the daunting part is looking at all of the, you know, when you get into charting, for example, you know.
That's what I was about to ask. So when we have to draw PCT features, I mean, it's going to be very difficult to look into this huge list and find your feature.
Right. What you would do is you go up here and let's just say data. You know, you say data, it will filter it for anything that has data or data in it, for example. So under charting, you can see like, you know, there's data labels. So sometimes it doesn't work. You just try some other keywords, and you know, the add and modify contents doesn't make any sense, but on most of these they do. So for example, if I'm going to do some filters, you know, there's filtering, there's an advanced filter, there's an apply filter. Now, keep in mind that, you know, it's not going to, the tool's very powerful, but essentially, you know, the skills that can be validated are anything that's in any of our 4 book series. So if you're getting into something pretty advanced, it may not be a feature that can be validated. The power of this tool for Excel, though, is when it comes to the formulas and function feature, because in that particular case, that doesn't matter how complicated or how nested or how many formulas or how many functions you use, because again, it's just looking to see, I don't have that formula in this cell from the starting document, but I have it in this one.
Yeah.
So that's where the power really comes in. You know, when it comes to pivot tables, it's kind of limited, but does its job, you know, in that particular case. And again, you can clone any one of our projects and look at how we're validating this to make to understand how it kind of works.
You guys are doing great job. I mean, creating these projects.
This is the tool. This is the tool that our authors use to build all of our projects. And again, you know, it's a powerful tool for you. So again, my suggestion would be, you know, to make, you know, some small changes, you know, just changing some of the values and then updating the final document to reflect those. And then as you saw, when I upload the final document, it'll automatically open up those particular features to say, there's something's different in here, something changed, you know. That makes it a little bit easier.
So just play around and I mean, keep practicing, changing, playing it around. That can help.
That'd be my suggestion. So, because again, the thing that can really blow up in your face is that you put this out and it's just being marked wrong, and students then lose confidence in the tool, and then they're constantly emailing you and complaining.
That's true.
There was a school where somebody this is before I came on board, but they contracted out to somebody build their projects. He didn't test the final document, and things went terribly wrong.
Yeah, even one of my colleagues just told me like he was using one of the graded projects, and because students were doing it very differently, so like they were given like 0 marks or something. So like he ended up using that. I mean, he's doing without it now. He said because there are so many ways of doing the same thing here. So
yeah, but so the grader projects don't care what way. Oh, you're talking about the formulas.
Formulas or even
Well,
especially
it would be the formulas, because the project creation tool is looking at results. So when we ask a student to fill down, for example, if they do, that's great, which is what they're supposed to do. If they were to copy that formula in each cell or type it in each cell, it would still mark it correct. We can't validate that they've filled down. We can't validate that stuff. But you're right. I mean, dependent on our authors and the possible permutations on a formula,
Yeah, I think we can learn it only. We cannot learn everything overnight. Like we have to spend months on it, and maybe with time we'll be more proficient in it. So presently, only like 2 of our instructors are using MyIT Lab. So our goal is to make like everyone who is teaching Excel should be using MyIT Lab.
They should be. But yeah, I mean, so that's, I mean, you can obviously create your own in this in this tool too, but this is, if to modify them, this is the process. So I guess my suggestion to you would be, and I'm not showing you how to publish and get it into your course yet. That's a whole nother step. Because once you do, it does act like any other grader project. So with violations and all that. So that's one of the other things that's nice. But I would suggest that you go ahead and maybe clone a project and start playing around a little bit so that you get a little comfortable with it. And if you have any questions, send them my way. And then when you feel comfortable enough to ready to publish it, we can meet again. And, I can show you the publishing process and how that works. Because what happens with a lot of our projects, and you'll see this out on our library here, this is version 11, right? So what happens is that, we put these out there, and just like if you were in your class and students figure out some bizarro way of doing things, and we're like, okay. So the way it works in our system is that you can't edit a published project. So what you do is you reclone it, you make whatever change on the background, and then when you publish it, it overwrites what's existing out there. And so you don't have to republish it and push it back into a course. It'll pick up any of the new instructions. It'll pick up any of the new grading that you've decided, any new permutations that the student did. The faculty that I've worked with who build their own projects, that's essentially what they do. It takes a semester or two for that project to get, fleshed out, where the students, because, again, it's what, as I said to you, this is a self-service tool. So the quality assurance is on your end. Whatever changes you make in here, and again, if you only make some small changes, it shouldn't be a big deal, because our projects have gone through pretty heavy quality assurance. Yeah. Whereas if you're building your own,
I understand your point. So we can't make changes to whatever is already published. We can just like clone it and make some changes, and we can publish it.
Correct.
Yeah. So if we publish it, it becomes available to the pool, or it is visible only to us?
So you can, when you publish it and you put the creator project into your course, you can then share that out to anybody you want. There actually is a share button in here to share the project with others.
Okay.
So the thing, again, that's important, remember that the project creation tool is tied to your account. So you know, if you wanted to give the project to somebody else, to one of your colleagues, you can export it as a .pct file. They would have to go in and import it into their own, instance. If it's a project that's already published and out there in your course as a grader project, you can share that with whoever you want. And they, but keep in mind that they would not have access to make any changes to that project because it's not part of their account. So if they had one of their students say, hey, this permutation should be added, you're the one that would have to go in and make that change, because
or he can also clone it and make the change. And no,
well, he can clone it and make the change, but it wouldn't update in your project.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So the idea here is, if this is being used in multiple member sections across multiple faculty, you don't want each one having to make the change. So if you make the change once, you want that to flow down to everybody. So that's where, when it comes to these kinds of things, a lot of schools that have, they may have an admin account where multiple people will have access to that admin account. And then if that's the case, that's where I would be making these modifications from. So that way,
we'll also be doing the same. We have a course captain, so we'll just keep track of all this stuff.
Right, and so that it should be in that account. Just just for the sake of making, so like if you made the changes here, you could do the export. They would be able to import that into their PCT instance and then publish it out from there, so that way it'll be in one spot.
So we can easily change the instructions. We don't have to upload the instruction file if we change the instructions.
No. So once I made this change, this stays automatic. So if I download the instructions, it's going to have in there for instruction 2, as you can see, 626 and 630.
So that is editable.
Yeah, but you don't have to edit that. You edit right here. And this auto generates.
Okay, so this text is editable. Whatever I see in the middle panel, this is all editable.
Correct. Yeah, the text is, and you can change, if you want to turn the hints on, that's another thing. Yeah, and it's, and again, it's bold and italic. You can't put in their URLs. I would love to do that. Images would be nice, but no. Those kinds of things just can't be added to the instructions. And it would be the same if you were to download the instructions, even though it's a Word file, and add an image. When you would upload it, those images wouldn't be there. Does this help you to understand a little bit?
I hope so. So it will be of great help, obviously. So I'll start with making little changes, and slowly I'll move to making the big ones.
And again, that's my suggestion, to start there. When the recording gets rendered, I'll forward it to you so you can kind of watch what we did. And then again, if questions come up and you're not sure, please shoot me an email directly. And I usually do a screencast and can help. I have access. I can log in to accounts too, so I can help. All right.
Thank you.